Chapter 3. Tskatii. City of Levant, 10,000 years ago. The stimulus to open his eyes triggers, yet Ymir cannot see anything but darkness. It is an unusual darkness that not even the superior night vision of a Tskatii can penetrate. It is days before he is able to come to the realization that it is not the darkness that is all-consuming, it is that he no longer has the eyes with which to open. Entombed in a relic of magical conjuring, the Tskatii general can do nothing within his prison except listen and wait. Chanting in the ancient Yazatan tongue, similar to his own language, Ymir struggles to decipher the words echoing around him. Half a dozen men in robes of various colors and fashions walk around in a circle, while a seventh robed figure fans the flames of a large bonfire. "Guardians we are of the imprisoned ones," one of the men says. "Almighty Creator, grant us the power to mold their prisons and strengthen the barrier protecting them." Human sorcerers? Ymir wonders. That is right. I was placed inside of a magical container by that human Enkidu's allies. The center magician submerges 3 discs into an iron cauldron, suspended over the now intense fire. As the metal burns to a boil and liquefies, Ymir is surprised that he cannot feel any heat. All he can hear now is the crackling sounds of the flames dancing below him as they caress the cauldron. With intense concentration, he is able to extend his hearing past the flames and focus once more on those who now hold him captive. "Bring me the casing," the center magician says. He soon pours each melted container into a mold, which is then fashioned into an amulet and blessed with enhanced barriers, so that merely damaging them will not set the occupants free. Listening beyond the flames is tiring, and soon Ymir drifts away into a deep slumber. Ymir is unsure how many years have passed, or how many different guardians his amulet has been in the care of. In his prison, time blurs, and it's impossible to keep track of. Entombed, there is no sunrise or sunset. There's no moon or stars to track across the night sky. Apart from the occasional voices here and there, there's only silence and darkness. Hooves, Ymir thinks, his thoughts scattered and slow. A brief whirring sound is heard as an arrow sails through the air. A pained scream follows, then the panic of the horse, before finally the sound of the rider falling to the ground. Ymir can no longer hear the beating of the man's heart as he closely listens. 2 men rush the attacker with curved blades, but with a simple whispered incantation he transforms into a ferocious black-furred bear. A single swipe of his paw breaks the neck of one of the men. The second man reacts, just a second too slow with his swing, and a retaliatory swipe of the bear sends him crashing against a tree. Moaning, the man tries to crawl towards his sword, but its body is broken and mangled. The bear roars and falls upon him to end his pain. A golden pendant shines out of the corpse's shirt, catching the bear's eye. "Take it. It now belongs to you," a non-corporeal voice says, tempting the dark-haired mage, as he reverts back to human form. "Malik!" an armored soldier shouts, jogging to catch up to the mage. "The king did not authorize lethal action to be taken against these refugees." The magician nudges one of the curved swords with his foot. "They did not care to treat us." "His Majesty will not be pleased." The soldier kneels and turns one of the bodies over to verify the nationality. As feared, the prominent brow, thicker cheekbones, black eyes, and the sharp features of the man make his origin no great mystery. The Zanimbian refugees were promised safe passage through the region. If King Zygamwa of Zanimbia learns of this, our own king will be forced into a war when we are already spread thin. Wars against the northern country of Larag and eastern barbaric tribes of the Galts and Adamites have taxed the resources of Bad Timbria very greatly. A once prosperous nation, Bad Timbria has dwindled much in recent years due to a seemingly endless tide of war and bloodshed. The Zenimbians will not notice one small refugee caravan falling in our lands. Marauders and beasts are frequent dangers to any traveler the world over. Badtembria is no exception. Situated in a mountain pass, Badtembria is the only nation in the region with access to the southern seas. To the southeast, the loose tribes of Zenimbia thrive on the coast, but have been decimated by the northern barbaric tribes, which seek their own hold on the sea. The Zenimbians have begun a mass exodus from their lands, losing badly to the barbarians. Badtembria's King Sepad Nebrius has granted the Zenimbians passage through his nation and its protection between mountain ranges. The region is several hundred miles west of the Yedhoda Desert and the ancient megalopolis of Levant. "What is that?" the soldier asks, catching sight of the wily old magician pocketing something from the breeches of one of the corpses. Malik pauses, surprised to have been noticed. With a sigh, he reaches into his own breeches and holds out a small money purse containing several golden coins. "Funding is scarce. I do not wish to trouble the king for another allowance." The soldier frowned, snatching the purse from him. "This belongs to King Sepad and will be added to his coffer. It is the king's decision where funding is allocated, not yours." "So be it," Malik shrugs, rubbing the golden amulet still in his pocket between his fingers. The object generates a calming warmth and feels natural to be in his possession. "Come on, we have wasted too much time. Gather their weapons and rations and pull their cart off the path." Begrudgingly, Malik complies. The soldier is none other than Fir Stumbach, King Sepad's second-in-command and chief military advisor. He is the king's ear more than anyone else in the world. Rejoining Firas' regiment, they make their way back through the alpine forests to the city of Badtembria. While the city is a grand achievement of human architecture and philosophy, it is young by comparison to its neighbors at only 250 years. The city is wealthy, but the populace is ever shrinking as the income stores rise for the nobility and scholarly class. The jaded labor caste has begun a massive immigration north to the city-state of Larag. Beyond King Sepad's control, Badtembria and Larag have gone to war over the ultimate fate of the laborers. As a ploy to replenish the lower class, an influx of Zenimbian refugees have recently been brought into the city. Malik is met by several of the king's large and heavily armored personal guardians, called the Dolken. Wielding axes taller and wider than the body of an average man, the Dolken swing them with such agility and grace that they are sometimes called the dancing executioners. The Dolken do not care about titles. Each was selected at a young age for their abnormal size and physical prowess, and raised for battle. Because of the large size of their weapons and their heavy armor, the Dolken train with large boulders tied to them in order to increase their weight resistance. "Master Malik, the king requests your audience immediately," one of the Dolken says, blocking their path. Malik curses under his breath and nods, knowing that refusing the king's summons is grounds for death. "Did your assignment go accordingly?" King Sepad asks as soon as the magician enters. Malik noticed Fierce is already standing like an ogre-sized peacock behind Sepad. "I traversed the split range as ordered and gained a visual on the Larag encampment. They number roughly 6,000 men, all light infantry. I saw only a handful of steeds in their midst." Fierce is unnerved by the magician's ability to transform his body into the shapes of other animals. Likely, he saw the enemy camp by transforming his body into a bird of some kind and soaring over them unseen. "What of the Zenimbian refugees? You killed some, I am told," King Sepad asks, already knowing the answer. Malik tenses, his left hand beginning to shift into that of a lion, in the fear that the Dolken will soon seize upon him. I made a quick decision based on what I believed to be for the greater good of Bad Tembria. The refugees set upon me after declaring their destination to be Larag. I feared that any Zenibians learning they could reach Larag safely would not come here. King Menlu has no sympathy for our declining lower class. It would only welcome all the Zenibians with promises of gold and land just to spite us. I did what needed to be done and smote them. Sipad stands, pacing the room in deep thought. The king is tall, and it is obvious that in his youth he was very muscular. Despite his grayed hair and wrinkles, King Sipad was once a fierce Dolkan warrior who slew the previous king and ascended to the throne some 38 years earlier. It was necessary, Malik adds, trying to further push his case. Larag will win this war should they begin to swell with Zenibian conscripts. What you speak is the truth, Sipad finally says. Your judgment on the matter is no different from what I would have done. You are a blessing to this nation, Master Malik. Malik feels a great burden lifted and smiles with relief. Thank you, Your Highness. After being dismissed by King Sipad, Malik returns to his quarters outside the palace grounds. A long, single-story home, the magician uses the freedom of being outside the palace gates to further explore his personal interests. Having finally acquired a valuable specimen from Levant, Malik returns to experiments that occupy most of his free time. A self-taught alchemist and practitioner of the arcane, Malik developed the incantation to transmute himself into half a dozen different animal forms through trial and error. The specimen opens her eyes and begins to thrash beneath her restraints. Powerful iron shackles prevent her escape, and a muzzle blocks her screams from drawing unneeded attention. The female is taller than most average humans of the same sex at 6 foot tall. Her skin is rough and pebble-like, yet not scaled. Bright red hair matches glowing eyes of the same shade. Lavender skin is the final indicator that this female is not human at all. Calm yourself. If I meant to kill you, I would have already done so, Malik says, stroking her hair gently. The female flinches at his touch. I traded a great many favors and fortune to get my hands on you. You are very special. He carves a shallow cut into her forearm with a small dagger and collects the blood in a bowl before applying ointment to the wound to cause the bleeding to stop. Malik begins to mix the contents of the bowl with various other ingredients. Fetching a Zenibian from outside, he sits the young man in the room's sole chair. The Zenibian's eyes widen in terror at the sight of the Tskatii female. "Demon!" he screams in his native tongue. "No, I want to leave." He tries to stand, but Malik rushes him from behind and holds the dagger to his throat. "Drink, or I will kill you." Malik forces the bowl to the man's lips. Trembling, the Zenibian begs not to have to ingest the creature's fluids. The magician ignores him, emptying the entire bowl down his protesting mouth. The Zenibian throws himself to the floor, gagging and trying to induce vomiting. "Oh, stop," Malik says, looking down at him in disgust. "There's no way this beautiful thing can taste so bad." The female rolls her eyes, thinking of all the ways she could flay the overconfident magician. Captured years ago by the legendary magician Refugio of Levant, the Tskatii named Misala spent nearly a decade in his dungeon as he conducted many experiments on her. She never thought she would ever leave that nightmarish place. Sure that she would die in that prison, she gave up all hope. It was not until Refugio was arrested by the king of Levant and fled into the wilderness that she and the gruesome dungeon were ever discovered. The king desired for her to be destroyed, but this Malik came to the city and eventually convinced him to gain custody of her. She regrets ever deserting her comrades. When the tide of the battle had turned in the humans' favor, she, along with many of her fellow soldiers, from the city and fled into the desert wastes of the Ayodhya. If only she had stayed to fight, she would have died with honor and never have been subjected to years of torture. She realizes with great regret that they were all fools to believe the humans could be so easily conquered. The one bright side to all of this she can see is that unlike Refugio, who gave her over to his soldiers repeatedly to determine if impregnation between the species were possible, Malik's experiments all seem to be alchemical in nature. The Xenimian stands, eyes glowing red. Malik cannot contain his joy. Clapping his hands, he quickly sits down to furiously jot down the results in his notes. Misala cannot believe the magician's results were successful. By ingesting her blood and several other simple-seeming ingredients, the human has gained the enhanced abilities of her own proud race. After a few minutes, the Xenimian's eyes roll back, and he collapses, his heart stopped. He approaches Misala with the dagger. Apologies, but it appears that I still have some trial and error work to go through. Misala cringes, feeling the blade cutting into her other arm. She closes her eyes and dreams of being felled by the sword of the man who took down her queen and the great generals. Weeks later, Malik takes his results before King Tskatii. He is confident now that the process has been perfected. Many Xenimians have died to produce these results, and the Tskatii Misala has bled gallons of blood. What is this that you have worked on for so long? You have made the anticipation of this moment very grand, King Tskatii says as Malik enters the throne room. I have developed a way not only to end our war with Larag, but to also crush the marauding tribes to the east. With this method, Badtimbria can conquer the entire world. Again, bold proclamations, Ferris says, his dislike for the magician apparent. King Tskatii ignores the outburst, looking forward to what Malik has brought before him. Malik ushers in a group of Xenimian men, all enhanced with the blood of the female Tskatii Misala. King Tskatii leans forward on his throne, watching excitedly as Malik reveals his newly enhanced warriors. The men are feral-looking, as though they have not bathed or eaten for some time. Judging by Malik's ruthless nature, it is quite possible they haven't. The lives of a few soldiers mean little to the man. All that he is concerned with is the strengthening of his nation and his own placement within. They look no different from wild men. How do I know that you did not go up into the mountains of Kirbet and capture these subhuman creatures? Most likely, they are nothing more than filthy Xenimian beggars dressed up to look like warriors, Ferris argues. He is not impressed. Malik grins, nodding for one of his soldiers to step forward. These warriors are enhanced with demon blood, and far more powerful than an average human. One of my elite soldiers is capable of breaking an enemy line and neutralizing their target, whatever or whomever that may be. Grandiose proclamations, but they are merely words. I cannot place my fate in the hands of words alone, Ferris says. Malik nods, understanding their caution. Should he invest too much time or resources into a project that fails, the king leaves himself vulnerable to opportunistic rivals. Choose your 5 greatest champions, and I shall put against them one of my elites of lesser skill. King Tskatii finds this claim outrageous, and knows that Malik has boasted beyond any means from which he may recover. The King's Royal Guard is the nation's most powerful warriors. There's no way that one of these tainted bloods can fell 5 of the world's best fighters alone. When Malik fails to live up to his arrogant proclamations, the king decides that he'll have him tortured to teach him humility. 5 of the King's Royal Guard step forward, drawing their massive axes from their backs and awaiting their ruler's command. Malik tells the smallest of his warriors to step up and forces him to drop both his sword and his shield. As the heavy equipment falls to the floor, Malik walks over and tears off the man's leather armor. The king and his guard are shocked by this brash display. He has no regard for the safety of his men, King Tskatii tells his soldiers. Do not feel sorrow for this unarmed warrior, but instead use him to teach Malik a valuable lesson. Attack whenever you are ready, Malik says, uninterested. It is as if he has truly no doubts about who will be victorious. The first guard rushes forward, bringing his axe down to cleave through the elite's neck at the base, where it connects with his shoulder. The elite sidesteps, slapping the sword aside with the back of his hand. With superior speed, the elite steps in close and slashes a clawed hand across the guard's throat. Blood sprays outward, showering him with gore. "They are very fast," Captain Ferris whispers in awe. "Do not give him the opportunity to strike," he orders the remaining warriors before he joins the fray. A second guard screams and drops to his knees, blood erupting from his ankles. Using his claws again, the elite slices open the vulnerable Achilles tendons, making it impossible for the men to remain standing. As the warrior falls, the elite wraps him in a tight headlock and twists. Neck broken, the guard falls, leaving only 3 remaining. The other guards attack in unison, rushing the elite enhanced soldier from the front and each side. He slashes through the arm of a guard to his right and pivots, kicking the one to his left in the chest. The right guard turns with his other arm in an attempt to hit the elite with a backslash from his axe. The elite kicks his heel, knocking him forward, and turns in time to block an overhead slash from the captain and retaliates with a similar chest kick as delivered to his comrade. The captain shrugs the kick off as best he can, but winces in pain as the impact dents his armor. Already he can feel the bruising spreading across his front and the pain that comes with each breath. "Have you seen enough?" Malik asks, grinning widely. Captain Ferris looks at his injured soldiers, then at the 2 already felled before grinding his teeth together in anger. "My king, I can still kill this bastard," Ferris growls, rotating his sword arm in its socket and trying to work out his soreness. "If you continue this, you and your men will die," Malik says. Captain Ferris leaps at the elite, bringing his sword down diagonally from right to left. The elite jumps backward, letting the blade bite deeply into the ground before thrusting his claws forward in a piercing stab. The blow penetrates the captain's armor and sinks deeply into his flesh. Blood steadily drips to the floor, drenching his under-armor protective garments. Pride at stake, Ferris ignores the probably fatal blow and grabs the elite by the shoulders and begins to headbutt him again and again. The elite's face becomes a ruin of smashed bone and crimson, and it becomes unclear which of the 2 is worse off in their struggle. "Enough," King Tskatii says. "I have seen enough." "Are you not impressed with the result?" Malik asks, gloating. He can see the king's irritation, but knows that he will do nothing against him after witnessing such a display. "Your creatures are very powerful indeed. My men did not stand a chance, as you warned." Malik pushes his self-promotion, feeling his ego grow further. "Even I was surprised how effective these enhanced soldiers were able to become. The mixing of demon and human blood produces an incredible hybrid being. Can these tainted ones of yours measure up against a true demon?" "That," Malik pauses. He had hoped to be able to test this himself, but was unable. "Is yet to be seen. After creating these hybrids, I no longer possessed any viable subjects to test against." "Does anyone else know of your methods?" "It is rumored to have occurred through natural, intimate pairings hundreds of years ago, but I have found no evidence to back those stories up." "See to it that no other is given this information beyond you or I. Any assistance you may have had must be eliminated immediately." "Yes, my king," Malik says, kneeling in respect. Captain Ferris tries to speak up, feebly, choking on his blood and coughing weakly. "Shall I order an end to his misery?" Malik asks, looking down at the captain distastefully. "Are you not a mage? Heal his wounds. A soldier that cannot live to learn from his mistakes shall never become stronger," King Tskatii orders. Malik grudgingly obeys, placing his hands over Ferris and enveloping in the healing light of the Dukan Halez spell. Wounds repaired, the captain returns to the king's side and bows before him in thanks. "Thank you for sparing my worthless life, your highness. Learn from this encounter and strengthen both yourself and your men. We cannot guarantee that we may not have to face a similar threat should an enemy discover the methods to create such creatures." After witnessing the impressive power of Malik's tainted bloods firsthand, King Tskatii's royal guards are the first to line up and beg to become transformed. The lone holdout is Captain Ferris, who refuses to lose his humanity and become one of those creatures. In a short time, his standing as captain is given away to a more powerful warrior, and it is only his unquestioning loyalty to the king that prevents him from being discarded completely. Captain Fierce's hatred for Malik grows each day, resenting him for introducing the new elite pets that the king has become so enamored by. Seeing that the sorcerer never is without his pendant, hanging from his neck, Fierce assumes that it is the source of his new power. Planning carefully, he schemes to take the pendant away from Malik and render him powerless. It becomes nearly impossible to find the magician without the protection of 2 or 3 of his tainted blood guardians, which have now been given the collective title of the Doken. Fierce knows that he stands no chance of getting close to Malik with such defenses. Desperation grows within the captain as he sees his relevance dwindling. Loyalty can only hold one up so far, and he gains less and less time with the king. He knows that soon King Sepad would not even notice his absence. It is during this time of despair that the ethereal voice first comes to him. Take the pendant for your own. Malik has no claim to it. There is a greater power slumbering within that he knows nothing about. The voice urges him. Each day it pushes him further, coaxing him to react with violence against the sorcerer, and if need be, the king. Malik squanders the gift he has been given. It is time for someone else to have the opportunity to unlock their potential. Kill him, and take the pendant. I shall give you further instructions at that point. The captain tries to resist the voice at first. For weeks he tries to ignore it, or explain it away as a manifestation of his own selfish desires. When the voice does not go away, but instead increases its frequency and the torment that it brings, Fierce begins to believe in the existence of this invisible force speaking to him. Even if I were to go against Malik, I could not best the Dolken protecting him. The Tskatii are of no consequence. The blood they share was loyal to me in life. They will follow my instructions over that of the magician. Fierce plans his attack against Malik carefully in the following days, but before he is able to execute his plan, the Dolken burst into his home, followed closely by Malik himself. I have heard rumors that you plot against me and your king, Malik says with a sneer. No ill has ever been extended towards my king. I remain his man until the day I die. Malik nods towards the 3 Dolken flanking him. They draw their swords in return. The day has come, I am afraid. I have the king's ear now. It is I that will influence the shape of things to come. My power on this rock shall have no equal. It is I who shall decide who shall rise and who shall fall. The king was correct to believe your arrogance needed put in place. Sepad is a fool to have ever thought he could put me in any form of check. I have the power to unseat him if I wish, and it is that fear that maintains his unwavering support for me in my endeavors. He is not your tool. He would have had your head for such lies. Fierce screams, drawing his own sword. Malik laughs, waving off his challenger. I do not have the patience to argue with your zealousy. He turns to the nearest of the Dolken. Kill him quickly. I do not wish for his attitude to spread amongst the rank and file. The Tskatii shakes, his own blood betraying him from within. Kill him yourself, coward. The Tskatii growls, possessed by the voice of Sane. Malik instantly recognizes the voice. It is the one that has plagued him for months after discovering the pendant containing Yamura's essence. Lord Sane, Malik says mockingly, how wonderful it is to once again hear your voice. He inflects on the last word, emphasizing that it's all the being has. You have done extensive research to learn my name and discover how to block me from your thoughts. In several millennia, none other has accomplished such feats. I am impressed. And you are not as all-powerful as you believe yourself to be. Without a body of your own, you rely on manipulation and coercion of the weak to do your will. Ferris does not know what to think, hearing that he's been called weak for being manipulated by the voice. He wonders if this is true, that Sane has used him to try and eliminate Malik for his own purposes. The possessed Tskatii swings his sword at Malik, but the sorcerer knocks him back with a pulse of magical energy from his palm. The tainted blood can be easily removed. Do not think your weapons are infallible. Keeping his hand out, Malik does not allow the Tskatii to move. Shaking, blood begins to drop from the Dolkin's nostrils. I would never be so foolish as to create a weapon without having a way to counter such. The Tskatii screams in agony as blood flows steadily from his nose, eyes, and ears. Pooling thick on the floor, the blood swells out and causes even the captain to step back. Turning pale, the Tskatii's eyes roll back in his head, and he collapses to the floor. You could have been my hand in this world, a second Dolkin says, fixating his sword on Malik. With your power and intelligence, you would rule over your peers as a god king. Malik swings both hands in the Tskatii's direction, halting his movement. I shall become a king by my own might. I don't require the assistance of a bodiless Yazata, masquerading as a god. A third Dolkin moves against Malik from the other side, and he is forced to swing one hand towards him to stop his movement as well. The sorcerer struggles to restrict the movement of two powerful warriors, and the captain becomes torn by indecision. Ferris lunges at Malik, but the magician releases his control on one of the Dolkin, freeing himself to be able to conjure a phantom sword into his hand and using it to block. Malik is the less experienced swordsman, and Ferris begins to overpower him. Shifting into the form of a lion, Malik's paw slashes through Ferris's sword arm, cleaving it at the elbow. The former Dolkin screams in pain, staggering backwards as blood squirts from the stumped appendage. The Dolkin shirk away from the feral beast, and Malik shifts back to his human form. He picks up the sword from one of the fallen Dolkin. Come. It appears that it's time for us to take over this city. The sound of heavy shackles falling to the floor draws the magician's attention. He turns, only to have his throat torn out by Misala. The malnourished and hatred-filled Tskatii stands nude, covered only by the fresh arterial blood sprayed onto her by Malik. On the floor behind her, Ferris grins at having finally been able to rid Bod Timbri of Malik the Shifter. Satisfied, he too passes on. Little does he know he has set in motion the complete demise of the entire city and its people. The Dolkin stand unsure of what to do next. Blood of my blood, Misala stands, holding her arms out. It is us, not the humans, that shall take the city. Follow me, and we shall wreak glorious havoc together. The present. You really should not have done that, Ymura growls. The half-breed assassins back away in fear, sensing the power of a true Tskatii. Hair turning black and oily, Ymura's transition to control elicits a deep and primal terror within the blood of the assassins. They may have never met a full one before, but the traces of Tskatii blood within them warns them at an instinctual level to run. Black energy crackles around Ymura, and he begins to crack his knuckles and loosen up by doing leg stretches. You damned half-breeds should have minded your own business. Coming up against me is going to be the last mistake that you shall ever make. Angkor tenses, overwhelmed by the intensity of the former general's energy. What is your name, pureblood? The captain asks, holstering his gun and drawing a long, double-bladed weapon. The sword is meant to be wielded with two hands, and has an incredible reach. The Tskatii grins, rarely running across one with shared ancestry that does not recognize his terrible power. I am the great General Ymura. Surely you have heard of me. Angkor begins to laugh, rotating his weapon several times in confidence. Ymura? How absurd. That name exists as nothing more than a demon boogeyman to scare them into behaving. One as terrible as he would never inhabit the human world inside of a teenage boy's body. The half-breed smiles, but he strikes a nerve, and Yamura hisses, grinding his teeth together in anger. He raises his left hand, holding his palm out towards the Tskatii. Flecks of black energy begin to break away from his aura and pool into an orb in front of him. I must thank you for freeing me from the restrictions of my host. When he is conscious, I am plagued by his incessant moral objections. By taking him out of the equation, you have given me free rein to your demise. The Tskatii shake away their fear, raising their rifles. As the first squeezes the trigger to open fire, Ymir quickly hurls the orb of energy into the center of their formation. Ankur steps in to save his team, slashing through the energy with his weapon. The dual sword explodes on contact, knocking the captain to his back. His weapon reduced to 2 equal pieces. Ankur curses and stands back up. Ymir dashes forward, punching the Tskatii and knocking him back against the wall. Pathetic tainted bloods. You are unworthy to possess our power, Ymir mocks. I understand your desire to transcend your human weaknesses, but you shall never be a true Tskatii, no matter how much of our blood you're given. Kill him, Ankur coughs, standing back up. Blood drips from the assassin's mouth as it hangs open. His teeth are stained with red, and several of the top row are now missing, scattered somewhere on the motel room floor. It is shameful to see that the only trace of my kind left in this world is represented by impostors, such as your lot, Ymir says, glaring at the assassins. Aware of himself and Inyana being the only full-blooded Tskatii alive in the human world, the presence of the Tainted Ones is an insulting reminder just how spectacularly their invasion failed 10,000 years ago. One of the assassins raises his rifle to fire, but Ymir moves in quickly, slapping the weapon aside and driving a palm hard into his chest. The assassin staggers back, feeling as if his lungs are on fire. A second Tskatii moves in from Ymir's left and attempts to grab him. The former general is able to hook his arm and kick backwards into the attacker's shin. The assassin drops forward in pain, and Ymir uses his momentum to hip-toss the man over his back and across the room. A third assassin rushes him with several fast punches, but Ymir deflects each with ease before delivering a palm-heel strike to the face. The Tskatii falls back, blood spraying out from the ruin that moments before comprised his teeth. The assassins moan in pain, and Ankur is left in a state of shock and disbelief. The power displayed by a full Tskatii is phenomenal. He was never prepared for a challenge such as this. A part of him briefly considers the option to leave his team behind and make a run for it, but pride anchors him firmly in place. Ankur nervously draws a rapid response folding knife and flicks his wrist to lock the blade in place, never taking his eyes off his opponent. Ymir arrogantly watches with a smirk, allowing his opponents the time to regroup. It has been a long time since I was really able to cut loose and let off some of my pent-up aggression, Ymir says, stretching out his arms. I really must thank you again for rendering my host unconscious. Now I do not have to be plagued by his ceaseless chattering while I tear each of you asunder. Momentarily stunned after seeing Ymir's terrifying display of power, the nearest Tskatii is unable to raise a defense in time before the former general of Averno lunges in low and fast. 2 lightning-quick strikes to the solar plexus sends the would-be assassin sailing backwards and against the far wall. The Tskatii's back hits a corner hard, folding his body unnaturally before falling to the floor motionless. A second attacker moves in from the left, but Ymir is able to grab his wrist and pull him into a palm-heel strike to the throat. The Tskatii collapses, choking with a crushed windpipe. Shoot him! Ankur screams, raising his rifle. Before the captain can fire a shot off, a third Tskatii is thrown into him, causing his weapon to skitter across the floor. As the 2 assassins quickly scramble to their feet, Ymir snaps a fast kick into the face of the thrown man. His head rocked backwards, the man crumbles as soon as the loud crack of several vertebrae is heard. Ankur blocks Ymir's next kick with his forearm and sweeps his leg aside enough to put the general off balance and give him time to regain his base. "I've never had the honor of meeting a full-blooded Tskatii in person before," Ankur says, smiling as he holds out his folding knife. "It sickens me to know that pathetic creatures such as yourself possess the blood of my kind, yet you know nothing of our history or pride. The power that we are granted is all we need from your race. If the Tskatii were so great, why aren't they ruling over us humans right now?" Ymura slashes with a mid-level swipe, but Ankur parries it. Sparks leap into the air as claw and metal scrape across each other with tremendous force. "You sully our heritage. You call us demons, but demons are nothing more than an idea conjured up by frightened, ignorant humans to explain beings superior to them." Ankur brings his blade up diagonally from low, up across Ymura's left side, but the general backsteps and slaps the man's wrist aside. "You're nothing more than an outdated relic of the past." Ankur pivots, trying to slash his knife across Ymura's throat. Ymura kicks the captain's knee, buckling him down enough to connect with a hard blow to the face. Ankur rolls over his shoulder and instantly comes up with another wild slash that forces Ymura back. "There are no temples to your kind, no priests or priestesses. No one alive even cares you existed." Ymura kicks a chair at Ankur's legs. As the assassin sidesteps in avoidance, Ymura is already on him. The captain attempts to correct his mistake and bring his knife around in defense, but Ymura's claws speed straight for his chest as he turns. 2 gunshots veer the Tskatii off his current target, causing him to dodge in several twists before flipping backwards over a table for cover. "Are you all right?" Dennis Rial asks, keeping his sidearm fixed ahead, but rushing to Ankur's side. The captain takes a deep breath, having thought he was done for. "Yeah, thanks." He takes another deep breath, trying to calm his nerves and get his head back into the battle. The final remaining member of his team moves up into position beside him, so that they form a strong line against Ymura. "We shouldn't be facing him one-on-one," Genryu Yang says, checking the amount of bullets remaining in his magazine. Ankur rushes in under the covering fire of his comrades. Ymura ducks and feigns, trying to dodge bullets while remaining one step ahead of the flashing blade of the Tskatii captain. Twice does the knife catch flesh, releasing mists of red into the air. Ymura ignores the cuts, focusing on his own footwork and his positioning in relation to his attackers. He keeps his hands up, slapping wrist and forearm, in efforts to control the direction and strength of each of Ankur's strikes. Genryu empties his magazine and drops the gun, rushing into battle and drawing his own knife simultaneously. As the assassin tries to flank him, the experienced Tskatii turns and slaps Genryu's wrist to divert its slash downward into his own thigh. The assassin shouts in pain as his blood cuts through an artery. Trying to aid his teammate, Rial runs towards them and manages to score a roundhouse kick to Ymura's exposed ribs. The former general drops, blood exploding from his mouth. Rial tries to follow up his successful attack, coming down with a hammer kick onto Ymura's shoulder. Ymura spins, catching the assassin's leg between his hands and twists, flipping the man to the side and through a table. "I can handle this on my own," Genryu growls, angered that Ymura was able to make him cut himself. He tears his shirt, tightly wrapping it around his thigh to stop the bleeding. Ymura senses tremendous pride in the assassin and knows that he desires to finish him alone and with no assistance, like a true warrior. He wonders if perhaps this one did inherit more than just enhanced strength and speed from the Tskatii blood. "You cannot fight me by yourself. The only chance you stand is attacking me together," Ymura says, taunting Genryu. Genryu balls his fists, gripping his knife tighter, until his hands turn white. "Ignore him! We can't let him dictate the terms of our battle," Ankur shouts. "We must fight him together." Ymura nods. "Yes, your mother is right." "This is a direct order. Calm down and attack him with me." Taking a deep breath and trying to relax, Ginryu nods. The two assassins rush Yamura once more. It takes the Tskatii everything he has to stay one step ahead of the attackers. Splashes of blood fan outwards as fresh wounds materialize on Yamura's arms, chest, and thighs. Yamura throws his hands out, knocking back his opponents with a pulse of invisible energy. Pivoting, he blocks Ankur's next swing and grabs the assassin's wrist, forcing the knife back towards his owner's chest. Ankur struggles, but despite a strength far surpassing a normal human, he is unable to overpower the elite Tskatii. As the knife creeps closer to Ankur's heart, Ginryu attacks from behind and manages to press the tip of his blade to the center of Yamura's back. Feeling the pressure of the blade, Yamura breaks off from his struggle with Ankur and drops low to dodge Ginryu's stab before driving to the left and back up to his feet. "We can defeat him," Ankur says confidently. Yamura growls, eyeing his opponents carefully. "Don't let up." The two assassins rush their target, knives flashing like silver streaks of lightning, blocking with open palm strikes. Yamura redirects each attack with precise counterblows to wrist and forearm. The former general backpedals, losing ground to his opponents. Ginryu slashes downwards, whipping his blade across Yamura's right leg. Blood sprays outward, and the Tskatii pivots just enough to hook the attacker's leading leg and knock him off balance. Ankur switches his grip and comes down with an overhead stab. Yamura turns, striking the assassin in the chest. Ginryu recovers and throws his rear leg into a kick with his forward momentum. Yamura blocks the kick with his forearm, but narrowly avoids Ankur's thrusting knife to the ribs. Slapping his other hand down, Yamura diverts the captain's knife and escapes the deadly blow. "They're wearing me down," Yamura thinks in frustration. "I did not expect them to work in conjunction with each other so well." Ginryu swings wildly in an outwards arc, but Yamura ducks beneath it. Expecting that reaction, Ankur lunges in low, thrusting his blade towards Yamura's face. Posting his hands, the Tskatii pushes his body up over Ankur's blade, and the top of his head clips the other assassin's chin. Ginryu's mouth fills with salty blood, and he looks down to realize his tongue is lying in a puddle of gore on the carpet. Ankur rushes to his ally's aid, backing Yamura off with another quick arcing slash. The increase of his opponent's pain and his fear and desperation rising causes Yamura's bloodlust to grow rapidly. "I would say that now it is just down to the two of us," he says, addressing Ankur, who looks down at him with hatred. "Don't count them out," Ankur growls, trying to keep the spirits of his injured comrades up. Ryle begins to stir, awakening on the floor amidst broken pieces of the table. Ginryu lunges with his knife, blood still trailing from his mouth. With the general's attention diverted, Ankur fires 2 quick shots into Yamura's back. Seeing their opponent wounded, Ginryu drives his knife down into the hilt, into Yamura's collar. Blood pours out in waves, and the former general's color begins to drain. Choking on his own blood, he coughs as he fumbles at the knife to withdraw it. Ginryu pushes Yamura to his back with a foot, pulling his weapon free and flinging the blood off the blade with a flick of the wrist. "Finish him off," Ankur says, holstering his gun, "and bring along the head for proof of the kill." Ginryu kneels, pressing his knife against Yamura's throat. The 2 runic tattoos on the Tskatii's arm have vanished, and the assassin is astonished to see his previously inflicted wounds have faded. Before he can finish what he began, the assassin is struck in the back by Yamura's knee. Rocked forward off balance, the assassin is forced to post a hand past his target to prevent his face from banging into the floor. Yamura wraps one hand around the assassin's waist and rolls, reversing their positions and driving his fist up against the assassin's chin. 3 puncture wounds materialize on the soft underside of Ginryu's jaw. Blood drenches the assassin's throat and chest as Yamura lifts them both to their feet with his claws driven further into the man's head. "Damn him! I never even saw him deliver the blow that killed Ginryu," Ankur thinks, again drawing his gun. Ankur quickly raises the gun, but Yamura again rolls, hooking his opponent and raising him up as a shield. 3 holes are punched into Ginryu's back before Yamura hurls the body into his attacker. Anchor is knocked to the floor, and in an instant, the former general is on him, growling. Ryle takes a limping step forward, having extricated himself from the ruins of the table. But without even looking back, Yamura launches Ginryu's knife straight into the center of his chest. Anchor squirms out from beneath the Tskatii and scrambles back to his feet. As I said, it is just us now. Your team is dead, Yamura growls. Anchor whips his sidearm around to fire, but Yamura sweeps his feet and delivers a hard elbow as the man falls. The assassin's back hits the floor and he immediately rolls, evading a head-level stomp by Yamura. Back on his feet, Anchor pivots and manages to fire off one off-balance shot before the Tskatii is on him again. The bullet punches through Yamura's right shoulder, spinning him around. Anchor fires again, but Yamura drops his level, delivering a mule kick to the assassin's chest. The kick lifts the assassin off the ground and knocks the air from his lungs. He lands hard on his back and rolls to his feet over his shoulder, releasing a flash of silver at Yamura as soon as he rises. Yamura staggers back, grimacing as a small blade is sunk into his chest. The Tskatii fades quickly, using his remaining strength to withdraw the blade before collapsing to his face in a spreading pool of thick crimson. Anchor remains with his arm outstretched, chest heaving. He continues to keep his eyes trained on the ever-dangerous foe. Having been sure he was dead once before, he cannot afford to make another assumption. Steam rises from Yamura's body, and Anchor's eyes dart across the room to where his gun lies beside the Tskatii. Yamura stands, having used another Seal Acelair tattoo to heal himself. That is much better. Yamura grins, impressed that the captain managed another potentially lethal attack. Anchor cannot believe the regenerative capabilities of the Tskatii. He wrongfully assumes that this is a trait possessed by all of the purebloods, and is disappointed that his boost and abilities were so limited. Had I not killed your allies beforehand, you might have claimed that victory. Yamura looks back at the gun before returning his gaze to his opponent. Do you desire that weapon? He laughs once, but Anchor remains focused. Do you really believe that you could defeat me if only you had that? He kicks the weapon over to the assassin. Anchor drops, swiping his hand across the floor and rising back up with his gun. Yamura lunges forward, driving his claws through the assassin's chest before he can level the weapon. Every muscle tightens, and instinctively Anchor's finger squeezes the trigger, firing off a single stray shot. As the final deafening retort sounds, the floorboards splinter, and Anchor falls with Yamura atop him. Blood oozes around the Tskatii's fingers, and he flexes them to inflict further pain. I seem to be a bit out of practice, Yamura says, reflecting on their battle. I underestimated you, assassin. Taking those lethal blows from you was very careless of me. I should have taken them seriously from the beginning, Yamura thinks, fighting to remain in control as he already begins to feel the stirrings of Jake's spirit. I had hoped to store all of their energy with Seal Acelair, but ended up using over half of them just to stay alive. He looks at his arm, staring at the 2 remaining tattoos. I came close to messing this up and losing to these half-breed scum. It is best if I drag this out no further. Now, who sent you? Anchor tightens up, clenching his jaw and refusing to speak. Grinning, Yamura enjoys when his prey refuses to be cooperative. Who sent you? He again asks, digging his claws into Anchor's chest. The assassin tries to rock him forward, but Yamura is able to shift his weight and remain atop. The weight of Yamura on his chest is crushing, and Anchor finds it increasingly difficult to catch his breath. Was it Inyana? He digs his claws in deeper. Or the remnants of Konko? Just kill me already, I won't talk. Yamura smiles, baring his fangs. I shall see how deep your conviction runs. Jake awakens. Coming into dominance, he rubs his head in pain. Around him are the bodies of the Tskatii assassins. The floor is thick with congealed blood and broken furniture. He nearly slips on spent bullet casings. "What happened?" Jake moans, his head still throbbing. "You were knocked unconscious. I took control and eliminated the threats. In reality, they never stood a chance against me. They had no right to claim any association with the Tskatii." "They're all dead, aren't they?" "Of course. They intended to do the same to us. Mercy cannot be shown to enemies that desire us dead." Jake hesitates, fearing the answer to his next question. "How long have I been out? I mean, is that all you've been up to?" "If you're asking whether or not I killed other humans, no, I did not." "Isn't that what you enjoy?" Jake is confused and doesn't understand the lack of rampage by Yamura while he was unconscious. "I simply ran out of time. Do not presume that anything between us has changed." "Did you find out who hired them?" "The final assassin, still breathing, took the information to his grave. He held out so long that he succumbed to his wounds before I was able to extract any answer from him." Jake balls his fists in frustration, punching a hole in the nearest wall. "Damn it! If we don't figure this out, they'll keep sending assassins after us." "Allow them. These half-breeds were nothing I could not handle." "Until we learn who's behind this, we have to stay alert." Yamura nods, turning inward to think on the day's events. A growing list of enemies is an unwelcome distraction. All the Tskatii wishes for is to crush the relatives of his vessel, but with Inyana's return, and Hui being revealed to be active in this world as well, Yamura feels the pressure of adversaries on all sides. For the time being, he will need the help of his host in order to not only survive, but to defeat those who wish for his demise.